Okay, so let's get right to the point. What is going on with AMPHOREUS, right? Like, the devs want us to believe that all we need is Aquila's core flame, and then we'll be ready for the Era Nova. Like, it'll be a great happy ending, heartwarming even. But there are so many mysteries, like, surrounding this planet, and no less than 5 patches to go until its conclusion, so what's, like, actually going on in AMPHOREUS? But first things first, let's get started with something simple that you've probably already heard. AMPHOREUS is stuck in a time loop. Crazy. This theory is super popular, but we're going to take it a step further today. Time loop theory has been popular since 3.0 because it would pretty handily explain a lot of the strangeness that's going on in AMPHOREUS. AMPHOREUS has this cyclical nature in a lot of ways. There's the infinity symbol that twists like a Mobius strip, the way the core flames are inherited by the Chrysos heirs to become the next gods, the focus on the Era Nova, which is, in other words, the world's like rebirth of sorts. All of these themes of death and rebirth have led a lot of people into thinking that AMPHOREUS is in one big time loop. And honestly, it's pretty like on the nose. Like, kind of feels like the developers want us to think that. But here's a question that I don't feel like anyone's asking: what causes it, right? Like, what causes the time loop itself? Everything in AMPHOREUS seemingly continues linearly, like forever, until people forget about how the previous gods came to be. So at the very least, it must last for a very, very long time. In looking for an answer, I decided to look at none other than the very interesting Lygus. Considering he's an overseer for AMPHOREUS, and more specifically the overseer for the Lord Ravager stuck inside of AMPHOREUS, he clearly knows a lot more than he's willing to share with Herta. He's keeping AMPHOREUS intact for a special reason, which is to keep a Lord Ravager trapped here. When Herta tried to simply walk into AMPHOREUS, that was not allowed, but clearly us flying a cart of the Astral Express into it wasn't as easy to stop for Lygus. In general, outsiders are not supposed to interfere, considering a Lord Ravager is stuck in here. But now, in terms of what causes the loop itself, what does Lygus have to do with that, right? Well, looking at his direct actions in the story, Lygus helps Anaxia to meet Kefali, someone who he thinks is trying to help the Council of Elders. As the Theorios, he's supposed to be a neutral party, and yet he helps the Council and Anaxia, those he perceives as trying to end the cycle. And surely Lygus knows that this will result in AMPHOREUS being consumed by the Black Tide, right? So why would he want that? But before we jump into the why, we need to first answer a question regarding the Black Tide's origins. So, like, what's up with that? Who created it? Why does it simply destroy everything it comes into contact with? Simply put, I confidently think that the Black Tide is the embodiment of the Lord Ravager's effect on the world around them. I mean, I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. Now that we know Nanook is involved with AMPHOREUS, a picture begins to form. AMPHOREUS isn't just a trap for the Lord Ravager, it's even more. It's a feeding frenzy for the Black Tide itself. And, like, perhaps that's exactly it. When AMPHOREUS is consumed by the Black Tide, the embodiment of the Lord Ravager's effect on the world around them, perhaps that is precisely what triggers the loop. That would explain why Lygus would support the Council, because the looping timeline gives the Black Tide something to feed on forever, before it consumes all and time is reset so that it never runs out of something to destroy, staying trapped in AMPHOREUS forever. Now, before we get to the big one, since this is all, like, pretty surface level, we have to establish some things about the Flame Reaver first. The so-called nameless Swordmaster who came with the Black Tide is very obviously the centerpiece of AMPHOREUS' plot, the driving force of conflict, and interestingly shares many resemblances to our good friend Phynon over here. This is by no means like groundbreaking theory, not yet at least, but this has to be established before we get there. Many people are saying the Flame Reaver is a Phynon from the future, but I have a more interesting idea that I'd like to propose. So the Flame Reaver is trying to gather all the core flames at once, right? And using his special sickle that can store the core flames for some reason, collect them together and do what exactly, right? Like, we don't know what it is, but whatever it is, the Flame Reaver is extremely determined, and their actions reflect how certain they are that whatever they are doing will work. It's also important to note that the Flame Reaver does not want to kill just anyone, only those who are absolutely necessary for what he is trying to achieve. He's not a senseless killing machine, but rather a creature of motive, with a goal that's being kept secret, and the means to that goal is to gather all the core flames for some reason. So what if the Flame Reaver is collecting the core flames because it will stop the time loop for some reason? As in, this timeline will cease to exist permanently if he gathers all of them and takes them with him. If the Flame Reaver is the Lord Ravager, then he'd surely want to end the time loop and escape AMPHOREUS, right? So we can kind of flip that logic on its head and say, well, he wants to steal the core flames, therefore that might be what ends the loop. But if that's the case, how the hell does he know that'll work? How does he know how to travel through space and time instantly and control the Black Tide and wield a blade that can magically store core flames? How does he do anything that he does, right? Like, it's a really important question to answer because he does all of this with such certainty that it will work. So, how? Well, what if I told you that it isn't as simple as just one time loop? Imagine a room. To everything inside of the room, time flows completely linearly. It moves forward. However, this room has a light bulb, one that is always on. In fact, it must stay on for one reason or another. If the light bulb were to break, then something very bad will happen. So when it does actually break, something magical happens instead, and suddenly the light is replaced. But how? Well, because it's connected to something, a power source of sorts. When the power source detects that the light bulb has been broken, it rewinds time in the room back to when the light was working. It keeps doing this until, well, it keeps doing it forever, actually. This process is never supposed to end. However, here's the catch. There's more than one room. All connected to the same power source, each room is slightly different, similar to the first room, but different nonetheless. And what happens when the light bulb breaks in these rooms? Well, the same thing. The bad thing can only happen if all rooms' light bulbs are broken. But because time is rewound every time one of them breaks, that should be impossible. Now, what if someone inside one of these rooms became aware of the other rooms? What if they realize the room they are in is simply looping forever, and if they don't get out right now, they will loop too and never remember this? What if they then found a way to break out of their room, but found themselves sucked into another room immediately? What would this person do? How would they escape this trap? For the sake of argument, let's say that attacking the power source is off the table. The power source exists outside of the realm of rooms, and therefore cannot be interacted with. So they have to stop the bulbs from being replaced, right? They have to stop time from looping. If time doesn't loop, and then none of the rooms are lit, then the very bad thing will happen, won't it? But what exactly is this very bad thing? Let's say this individual realizes they are not in these rooms by chance, but rather they are trapped here. The rooms serve as a prison for them, an endless labyrinth of looping time meant to keep them here forever. The very bad thing would be them escaping, and they want nothing more than to do that. So here's what they do. You go into the room, you take the light bulb out of this room and into another. Doing this stops the loop from happening, because the light bulb was never broken, but also removes the bulb from the room. Keep doing this until all rooms have no light, and bam, you break out of there. This is what I believe is the true nature of AMPHOREUS. The Flame Reaver is stuck in a series of rooms, or alternate timelines if you want to call it that keep looping infinitely, keeping him and the Black Tide here forever. He has found a way to break out, but it requires endless brute force. Taking all the core flames and removing them from the timeline causes the time loop to not occur, which means that the Black Tide can consume everything freely, and eventually, he will do this to all the rooms. Again, I say this with confidence because of the evidence I brought before. The Flame Reaver's actions reflect that he knows what he's doing will work, and the only way for him to know that is if he's already done it before, possibly hundreds or thousands of times already. He refers to this world as a fallen leaf, a phrase not to be taken lightly. If the world of AMPHOREUS we know is a fallen leaf, then maybe the tree is multiple AMPHOREUSes all connected in different ways. That means the Flame Reaver is likely one particular Phynon, a Phynon who discovered the truth and is trying to break out. We have several reasons to think this. We see the Flame Reaver directly try to attack Maide's back, a weakness only Phynon should know about. Phynon's playable character will be of the destruction path. Their visual motifs are very, very similar. It's like extremely on the nose. And Phynon and Flame Reaver are both referred to as nameless in different ways. Along the way, this Phynon figured out how to traverse between rooms and is trying to destroy the trap one timeline at a time. In 3.3 and 3.4, I believe we will fail to stop the Flame Reaver, and he will steal all the core flames from this timeline. He will then leave this timeline to be consumed by the Black Tide. When he escapes the next timeline, we will follow him, and find an AMPHOREUS where things have gone slightly different, or potentially in a different order. Characters like Hysolins and Saridra will still be around, but other characters may not be. It'll be like an entirely new world to us. And, I mean, where it goes from there, I don't know, obviously. Perhaps the Astral Express's presence as outsiders will derail the Flame Reaver's plans. It's hard to say this early on for certain, but regardless of the outcome, I very strongly feel that there's more than one timeline going on. This is what I'm personally referring to as room theory. You could also call it leaf theory, considering there's a lot of parallels for trees and leaves going on. And I feel like the tree thing is more likely to be how they would tell it in-game. But yes, that is all I have today. Thank you for watching.